Welcome to this live question answer session for the webinar on articulating the masterpiece, writing a quality research paper. These are some few contact details. You can connect to me on any of this social media. And this is something with which we even would like to start today's session, that this was the element of weightage for acceptance or rejection of any research paper at any good quality journals, right? So we will always keep this weightage in our mind, even when we will be discussing about the answer. I mean, even when we will be answering to your questions. So we have divided your questions in several aspects. I mean, we have divided in several parts. So the first, we will start with the questions which were related with the titles, introduction, literature review. Then we'll proceed with the research methodology. Moving further, we will take up the questions pertaining to data analysis, findings, and conclusions. And lastly, we will talk about the abstract, keywords, then bibliography or references. So we'll take up all those questions. And at last, we will take up some generic questions, which were not the part of any of this individual components, but these were overall questions. Okay, so to start with the first question, that is there any particular format to summarize the review of literature that will help us in writing? Yes, to write the review of literature, there are several ways, there are formats which will give you an idea how should one write the review of literature section while writing the research paper or writing the thesis, as well as you can write entirely a literature review based research paper. I mean, a research paper, a manuscript which is written exclusively on the basis of literature review without applying the research methodology or introduction or any statistical tool. So there are certain formats available for writing the or summarizing the review of literature. However, because this is entirely a very large gamut, and entering into answering this question with this section, I mean, with this time limit would not be much feasible. So in case if you really want to know that things in a better detail, we will be organizing a session on writing the literature review, exclusively writing the systematic literature review, and a model being developed, SRAM model being developed by me. So you can attend that and you will get the in-depth understanding of it. However, you can search the formats of writing the literature review on Google and you will get 2-3 different formats. That could be a thematical format, or that could be a time-based formats, right? Or there could be a methodological formats. These are some names of the literature review writing formats or summarization format. Another question is, please throw some light on importance of including the newspaper articles in literature review and how much weightage should be given, should we give to newspaper articles if the topic taken is recent event. Also, please help in writing the citations of newspaper articles. You can use the newspaper articles as a part of review of literature. However, the major problem with the newspaper article is, one, the focus of newspaper article is more on a free writing and not on data. Second, the newspaper writings are not always correct because they are writing for the purpose of making the things understandable for the common public. However, when we talk about writing the research paper, our objective is to making the people, I mean, making the academic people understand about what is going on, or industry people understand about what is going on, right? So there is a vast gap between the objective of writing something, I mean, newspaper articles and academic articles. And that's why you can use, I mean, you can cite the newspaper articles. However, you should not cite too many newspaper articles to create your review of literature. In international forum of researcher, it has been accepted that if the newspaper is either having the national presence or having the international presence, the article from such newspaper only should be accepted, and that too not more than 5 to 10%. Still, it depends upon your topic. However, people won't, reviewer do not easily accept the citations from newspaper articles, especially if it is the local newspaper or vernacular language newspaper. Another question, another point of discussion was, I have heard that information in newspaper article, blogs, government site, etc. are not entertained by reviewer. I already answered this. Yes, it is not much entertained by reviewer. As I said that, newspaper articles and blogs, government websites, that is completely entertained and acceptable by reviewer. But blogs and newspaper articles, because as I said that they are written with a different objective. One, second, they are more of a free writings, and third, they are not much supported by datas, right? And that's why they are not much entertained. So I received an advice used to use only 1 or 2 maximum in complete paper. Yeah, I advise the same thing. Yes, you should not use it much. Now to answer your another question, citations. So which citations, which style of citations you want, APA or MLA? You just search it on Google, MLA style of citing newspaper articles. You will get the basic format of that. But I'm not putting up intentionally all the styles, because MLA, APA, Howard, Vancouver, they all have their own ways to cite the newspaper articles. But you can easily get it by searching it on Google, the citation methods for newspaper articles. Going further, is it mandatory to include a subtitle along with the title, or just the title itself, which could attract the attention of the reader, is necessary? It is not necessary to use the subtitles. If your title is self-explanatory, there is no need for a subtitle. So I disagree with your, not exactly the disagreement, but to answer your question, it is not mandatory. So there is nothing like compulsion or mandatory. However, why we writing the subtitle? Because the reader once read the title, just by reading the title, probably he might not be understanding what is the sample you took, or in which country or context the study has been taken. So to provide them with some additional information, to provide some additional information to the reader, we used to write the subtitles, right? So yep, subtitle would attract the reader in more sense, especially suppose if I'll be putting up a title as work from home and self-efficacy, right? That's the title. But by reading this particular title, probably the reader would not understand the studies conducted in which country, during which period of time, and all those things, right? So just by putting up the semicolon and putting up the subtitle, we give them some additional information. It's an Indian study been conducted on Generation Z, and that too during the COVID period. So that is the additional information which will attract the reader further to enter into that particular paper. Another point of a discussion was, kindly give your expert advice on writing the time period of the study in the title of the paper. No, it should not be the title of the paper. It may be the subtitle of the paper. You cannot write down the study period as a title of the paper. Even if you wish, you want to write down, or if your research paper or your title truly demands the time period, then keep it in subtitle, not in title. As far as possible, you should avoid putting the study period or study time period in subtitle also. But as I said, if you feel that your subject matter demands to put down the study period, at least don't put it in title, put it in subtitle. Another question is, if we have written some part of literature review in table format covering the homogeneous studies and conclusion, whether it would be better to put the LR section at the end of, at the end under the table section or paper. First of all, the idea of writing the research, writing the literature review in table format itself is not a good idea unless and until you are writing a research paper which is exclusively the literature review research paper. So unless and until you are writing the exclusively literature review paper, you should not put your literature review in tabular format, because that is not highly acceptable way of literature review. as far as the quality journal is concerned. If you are writing an entire research paper exclusively on review of literature, then you can definitely use the Cooper's taxonomy or Watson-Webson's tabular method, but that is only for a only for a research paper which are exclusively literature review paper. So first, don't put up your homogeneous studies and conclusions in a tabular format. That is not the acceptable idea. And suppose if you are putting them in a tabular format for literature review paper exclusively, then you can put it should be put it under, it should be put it as a part of the body of the literature review paper, because table section is basically covering all the informations in a tabular format which are pertaining to data analysis, right? Moving further, is it okay if an author mention justification of sample used in introduction? As I have seen many papers like this, where importance of selecting the specific sample based on limitations of previous research are highlighted in the introduction using the integrated approach. You can put the justification for sample size in introduction just for the purpose of introducing your method. However, the detailed justification should be a part of research methodology, because RM is the portion or is the chapter or is the section of the research paper which will deal with the data analysis, which will deal with the sampling, justification for rationals behind the sampling method, rationale behind choosing the population or choosing the sample out of it. All this rationale or justification would be more suitable in the section of research methodology. However, if you feel like my introduction is very much required to have the justification of sample size used, because that is what is my USP, unique selling point. We told you that your USP should be reflected in your introduction part. So if sample which is used by you is the USP of your paper, this is the USP on which you are actually selling your entire paper, and you want your reader to buy your paper on the sample which you have used or which you have selected, sampling method that you have used. So if you are selling your paper exclusively based on that, then you should keep it under the introduction section. Otherwise, you should not keep it under the introduction section. It should be kept under the research methodology sections. So probably all those papers that you have referred would be selling their papers based upon those sample use, and that's why they might have put it in under that introduction section. Or that might not be the paper from ABDC or Web of Science or FT50 kind of a journal, because here we are not talking about the local journals, whatever they are publishing and putting up in front of the people, right? We are not actually entering into that particular part of the quality of the journal. Now moving further, can we use a blend of descriptive and integrative technique of review of literature? This is when I read this half of the question, I was actually thinking that what is this descriptive literature review you may be talking about, right? Because these are the 5 methods which we put up: argumentative, integrative, narrative, theoretical, and systematic. However, I assume that you are considering descriptive as a narrative one. Okay, so by considering this, let me read the further question. Like if any one researcher is one research is very important to mention in detail so as to bring a clarity, can we highlight it by giving the detailed explanation of that research, then further connecting it with the other researches through integrative approach? If not, in research article, what about PhD thesis? Can we mix in that, as it can be more elaborate and we are not bounded with the word limitations? What's your opinion? Okay, now you have actually put up 2 different scenarios in front of me. One is for research paper, research article, other one is for the PhD thesis. Let me answer you your first aspects, that is a research paper. So on research, as far as research paper is concerned, I feel that you want to put more explanation about one particular research paper or one particular author's paper, because you found that it is very similar to the study which you are going to do. I mean, that one particular paper has attracted you a lot, and that's why you want to put more explanation, more detailing about that particular paper in your research paper. uh, Frankly speaking, no, as far as research paper is concerned, this is not acceptable one, because even if you found one particular paper highly useful to you, don't have overshadow of the paper in your entire study, because the moment you are overshadowed with that particular paper, then probably you start feeling other papers not useful or less useful to you. So don't let any particular research paper be so heavily be keeping your, I mean, sorry, heavily be attracting your particular attention. Don't do that things. And it is not permissible to write when you are writing the research paper. Now moving on to your second facet, that is a thesis, PhD thesis. Yes, in PhD thesis you can use the mix of it, or you can describe or explain a particular paper in well depth, not only because of the word limitations, because you have mentioned that it is because of the word limitation. So I little bit uh, uh, deviate from your word, that is the word limitations. No, not because of the word limitation, but because the PhD thesis uh, would allow you to write something which is, I mean, if you can write down 5 sentences which are not much necessary or not of much importance, people would go ahead with it. People would accept that things. Reason being, you are not going to sell your PhD thesis to anybody except your university or your guide or your final examiner, right? But when you talk about publication or research paper, probably there are hundreds and thousands of, I mean, millions of your reader in future, they will buy your paper, right? So they will not accept anything which is nonsense or anything which is not much important in a research paper or research article. Moving further, suppose there are 5 constructs under my study. Where should I introduce them in a paper? If I write about them in introduction, then introduction would not be as advised by you. Should I write about them in literature review? Uh, as far as introducing the construct or variable is concerned, it should be introduced under the part of review of literature. That is a best way. Because when you are writing the review of literature, that point of a time, you can even quote the citations related with those constructs, right? In introduction section, even if you want to write down, or even if you feel that you should write something in introduction section, you can just name them. You cannot go into the detail and definition or description of that particular variables. Go with the literature review aspects and not the introduction section. That is not the correct sections to introduce your constructs. Next question was, yeah, kindly explain the introduction part with an example. Probably you are talking about how should we write introduction. So if you remember, we have started with, let me just put up that particular PPTs with you. But if you remember, so we have started the introduction section with, you start introduction section without writing the definitions and everything, right? You should not write the definitions of a particular topic. I mean, I'm talking about the quality research paper, right? So when we talk about those quality research paper and writing the introduction section of that quality research paper, we should not write down, yeah, there it goes. So we should not write down the definition and everything. So we should directly jump onto the opening paragraph, and that should include 3 basic aspects, and that is logic of your argument, writing style, and overall quality. So you can take up the example of any of your area and write down the first paragraph, read it, and identify that do we have all 3 concepts, do we have all 3 aspects in our opening paragraph. Then the second, third, and fourth paragraph, I mean, after the opening paragraph, in second paragraph, you should describe the situation. While describing the situation, establish the territory means identify that what is the situation, why you want to conduct this particular study. That should be the part of introduction section, which we call it as the describing the situations. Another one is establishing the niche. So in first case, we have described the situation, which is a very broader one. Now, out of that situation, we will particularly identify a problem. Say, for example, you are talking about supply chain management, because that is something the area under, I mean, it is my area of research. So under the situation, I will first describe what is the present scenario in supply chain management. Now from that paragraph, I will come to narrowing further down to what are the problems in this present situations. So I will identify problem 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm using the word 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can write down the problem that this is a problem that we have identified based upon the present situations. And the next paragraph will provide the tentative solution of that particular problem. Right. So when the reader will read this paragraph number 2, 3, and 4, it goes in a very systematic and logical manner. Yes, you first describe what is the present scenario of supply chain. Then you put up these are the problems in supply chain, and then you put up the possible solution of these problems in supply chain. So almost your introduction section is over. Now during this last particular closing paragraph, you just require to put down your own thought that what you are going to do to, I mean, because your research gap is already reflected. So what you are going to do to get the solution of earlier problems. Correct. So this is how one should understand the detailing of introduction sections. Divide them in 5 parts. Opening part, second part is creating the situation, third part is identifying the problem, fourth part is identifying the solution, and lastly synchronization or just summarization of earlier four parts. The next one is there any specific types of literature review for specific disciplines? No, there are nothing like types of literature review for a particular discipline. So these are not discipline specific, these are your objective specific, right? So don't enter into the discipline aspects when you talk about the types of review of literature. Can bracket, italics with special reference to be in title? No, they cannot be in title. Your title cannot include the brackets, italics, or any special reference. However, you can put something if absolute necessary in subtitle, because you provided me with one example that, for instance, I am from Ayurveda background. Should I put the meaning of terms in the bracket? I mean, there are some Vedas terms which you want to put down in a bracket with their different name or a scientific name. I should not advise you to go ahead with this, because your readers are from Ayurveda only, and I am damn sure that whatever you are trying to put it as a scientific name or a different name or something else, probably your reader would understand in a better sense. And if you feel like your reader would not understand, especially if the readers are from international, I mean, from outside India, and if they are not able to read, or I mean, they are not able to understand the meaning out of your Ayurveda's word, I refrain you to use this kind of a word. Don't use this kind of a word, and use those words which a common people can understand. I mean, your reader can understand across the globe, not only in Indian context, right? So you are advised not to use this kind of Indian context word, at least in title. Another set of questions are related with the methodology, research methodology path. So somebody has asked to again explain the theories versus methods, right? So let us again go back to that PPT wherein we had explained the theories versus methods, and how did we understood those theories and methods as those research methodology. Yeah. So how did we understood the theories and methods as? So this is about the theories versus methods. This was about the methods versus methodologies. Theories versus methods would probably be part of abstracts. Okay, so let me explain you just directly what is the difference between theories versus methods. So theories are those which will explain you, which will describe you what you are doing. And methods are those which will describe you how you are doing. Correct. So when we talk about comparison of theories versus methods and writing down about, I mean, one paragraph, I probably advise you to write one paragraph or paragraph wise explanation about theories and methods. So when we talk about explaining the theories, we mean by, say for example, you are studying something on organization behavior, take the help of certain theories which are related with organization's behavior and prepare your ground of your research studies. And when we talk about methods, that means how the above theories are measured, how the above theory, I mean, for above theory, how you are going to collect the data, the samples, how you are going to choose the population, how we will choose the sample out of that population, what would be the limitations, and everything that would be covered up under the methods. So first one should write a paragraph or two on theories and then mention that to achieve the above theories, what we are going to do, what we are going to implement. So that's what is the differentiation between theories and the methods. Another question was, what about the research paper which demands the word limit like 1500 or 2000 words? Probably 1500 or 2000 words are very less. If we talk about any research papers from Scopus or ABDC or Web of Science, and that if they are non-paid, if they are non-paid research paper, they would allow you to write down around 4500 to 7000 words. Right. So the quality research journals would never limit you to write in terms of wordings. Whenever they are putting the word limits, that is just with an objective to remove something which are unnecessarily in your research paper out. That's it. Otherwise, if your research paper includes every parameters which are very essential and the write-up is also very strong, they would even allow you to go ahead with the word limit, even if you cross the word limit being prescribed by the journal. Now, another point of discussion was, how would it be possible for us to add the research methodology and their subtopics and everything? Because if we do so, it would take 500 to 600, and that's why I use the word. I mean, I said, nah, I'm highly. I really don't know about which. I mean, you are talking about which journal particular or the journal house which would limit your entire paper to just 1500 to 2000 words. I assume that these are non-paid journals, right? And if they are paid journals, then probably, yeah, they would limit in terms of words, in terms of number of pages, because in one particular issue, they want to include more number of research paper. Correct. Still, we will discuss the same aspects at the time of actual question answer session once we open up after this presentation. Okay. The another question was, under research approach, can you please discuss more on interpretative approach? Yeah, so there were two approaches we talked of. One was interpretative approach and another one was a scientific approach, right? So that interpretative approach is a theory builders. So here you are not going to analyze, I mean, you are not going to analyze the data, you are not going to find, you are not going to search the findings out of it. Rather, you are going to establish entirely a theory. So theory builder, I mean, if we can talk about some of the very popular theories, say for example, Maslow's need hierarchy, a very strong theory been developed in, I mean, during 50s, 1950s, and still even today, after 70 years, we not only studied that particular aspects, but many organizations, even today, many corporates, even today are using the Maslow's hierarchy and the edited version of Maslow's hierarchy in practical purpose, I mean, for their management purpose, right? So this is known as theory builders, and this interpretative approach of research is a theory builder approach, wherein you will not simply collect the empirical data and go for the data analysis and findings and everything. Rather, you will establish a particular theory. My personal view on theory building approach be it the interpretative approach or a theory building approach, is that it really requires one, very high level of expertization on the subject matter, two, a reasonable amount of experience on that subject matter, and three, an excellent grip over vocabulary. If these three aspects present in the researcher, then probably he can be a good theory builder. Moving further, are objectives of the paper the premises for thematic literature review? And what if the paper has only one objective? Actually, I am really not able to understand this particular question. Thematic literature review, what we mean by, just to answer, I'm not answering this question because I did not understand the first half of the question itself. But thematic literature review means writing a literature review theme wise. So say, for example, if I'll be talking about my supply chain management, then I write down one paragraph of review of literature on supply chain. The next paragraph would be on green supply chain. Third paragraph would be on measuring the performance of green supply chain. That's called thematic review of literature. We will still discuss your question during the live question answer session. And answering your another question, what if your paper has only one objective? Your paper can be having one objective. That is absolutely okay with me. So if you understand that thematic literature review means, probably I am getting your question. Thematic literature review means objective-wise literature review. No, thematic does not mean objective-wise literature review. It is a theme-wise literature review. Moving further, could you please give an example for design research path having a balance both theories and methods? Probably I answered this question earlier when I was talking about theories versus methods. As you mentioned, separate theories and methods in a different paragraph. Yes, I do mention, and even I stick to it, that theories would be first explained, that which are those basic theory which creates a platform for your entire research paper, and methods means how you are going to use that theory, how you are going to collect the data for that particular theory. That is known as a methods. So example I have already quoted when I was answering the earlier question. Another question is, you have mentioned that research methodology should be in present tense for writing a quality research paper. Makes sense. I think the same is the case of thesis writing, right? Yeah, whether you are writing the research methodology of thesis or paper, it should be in present tense only, because this is something you are doing at present, right? This is not the work that has been carried out in past. So it should be in present tense, be it the research paper or be it the your thesis, PhD thesis. Is it permissible to quote numerical values in discussion? No, numerical values should be used when you are talking about findings. Discussion should not include the numerical value. Rather, discussion should include the overall conclusion which you are getting out of those numerical values, right? So as far as possible, avoid putting up the numerical values in discussion. Otherwise, it would be difficult for you to separate out the findings and discussion. They both would looks like same. Next question was, when you talked about writing limitation, you said to highlight the limitations related to data collection tools and data analysis tools. Sir, I could not understand how to convert these limitations into suggestions for future researcher, as according to my understanding, these limitations are inherent in the tool or analysis method itself. Then how future researcher would be able to correct them? Please discuss how to write it. No, I am still on my wordings of, yes, the limitations should be related with the data collection tool and data analysis tool. Why you feel like that the future researcher has to continue with the same data collection method or the same data analysis tools? We are honestly putting that this my data collection tool has this limitation, so that gives a clear-cut signal to the future researcher. You use some other way of data collection, you use some other methods of data collection. I agree with your concern that these tools are having their inherent limitations. I honestly accept those inherent limitations, but my honest acceptance of those inherent limitations gives an idea to the future researcher that they should go ahead with some other data collection tool or data analysis tools, so as to overcome the inherent limitation of my tools and data collection and data analysis tools. So that's what the answer to your question. We are showing them. Go ahead with different ways. In data analysis, you spoke about version 1, 2, 3. Kindly elaborate. Okay, I mean by version 1, 2, 3 is, say for example, I really don't know whether you would be in a position to understand this multiple regression or not. But say for example, if you understand the multiple regression, first version would be I add all my variables to multiple regression variable equation. I run the analysis and I found that R square value is, say for example, 0.26. However, I also found that there are some 20 outliers in my data analysis. So what I will do, I will repeat this entire step by removing those 20 observations which were outlier and come up with another second results. And that will, this time I will get R square value of, say for example, 42%, 0.42. So this is what I call it as version 1, version 2, version 3. Means I run the entire analysis. At the end, I will come to know that my analysis can further be improved by making some additions. So I improve that analysis, rerun the entire model. That is my version 2. Again, at the end of version 2, if I still get some opportunity to improvise my answers, I will have version 3. So that is what is we understood it as version 1, 2, and 3. Why standalone method is more powerful than synopsis method? Okay, so if you understand these two methods, synopsis methods. So under synopsis method of tabling, this was the methods of putting the tables. So if we put all the tables, synopsis method means you put down all the tables first, and at the end, you will write down the interpretation of those tables. Just imagine you have 20 different tables, right? 6 tables each for version 1, 2, and 3, and 2 tables for final answers. Now, if you put down all 20 tables and then you start writing about table number 1, how much it is painful for the reader to go back to the table 1 and again come back to your discussion part and read. I mean, come back to your findings part and read it. Very difficult. Against which, just imagine under every table or under the 2-3 tables. I mean the mix of 2-3 tables, if you write down the interpretation of those 2-3 tables, how much easy for the reader to read that particular aspects. That's why standalone methods are more powerful, because standalone methods would recommend to put one table, 1 or 2 tables, write down their interpretation, again put 1 or 2 tables, write down their interpretation. That's why it is more powerful than the synopsis method. Now, moving further, what do you mean by evidences of research while discussing about informative abstracts? So I just put up that figure for you, that informative abstract. So we mean by explain the main argument, important results, and evidences of research. So here we mean by this evidences of research, what we mean by is, under this particular abstract, you will put down your arguments. You will also show the various important results you will come across, and based upon those results, what are the proofs you received for achieving your objectives. These are proofs of achieving the objective, are evidences of research. Next, moving further, please explain and elaborate this point again, maybe with some example. Never mention to change to be brought in organization system for implementation of your study findings. Yeah, so when we put up this particular statement, we were talking about suggestions should be avoided. We should not suggest the organizations to brought in several changes in your organization simply based upon my study findings, right? We just portray our study findings in front of organization or a system or on the in front of government and show them, sir, this is what we found. And then let the management of the organization decides what they can do to implement those findings. So I mean by putting this particular line or a statement is avoid suggestions. Suggestions are not highly appreciated in academic writing, especially when we talk about quality of when you talk about quality research paper. Rather, managerial implications are managerial implications are more acceptable one. So you can just show them these are the managerial implications. Let them take the call whether they want to brought in some changes in their organization and implement those managerial implications, or they don't want to do that aspects. Now coming on to some general questions, these are some questions which were not a part of the entire, but this could be some of the questions which I come across. One is need some discussion on hypothesis if possible, please. I got 3-4 questions on hypothesis. Let me tell you, in good quality academic research writings, writing the hypothesis are not much appreciated aspects unless and until it is absolute necessary. People are not much interested in reading H0. There is no significance difference between X versus X1 versus X2. There is no significant relationship between X and Y. So this kind of, because these are basic understanding, and when we talk about writing the quality research paper of the nature, something which you are targeting for ABDC or Web of Science or FT50, there the reader are smart enough that from your objective or from your discussion, they will understand what could be the possible hypothesis. So putting it as a simple hypothesis, the way we used to put it in our PhD thesis, that is not acceptable with the good quality journals. If we abide by rules of word limits, should we add most of subtopics you ask for, or should we just add 4 or 5 subtopics to elaborate them in a good manner? As such, we personally feel like, especially when you are not the native English speaker, we feel like writing more words would be a good way of explanation. I actually have an opposite mindset or a thoughts. Writing less number of words would reflect the quality of paper, right? So probably word limit would not be too much important to you when you are writing some subtopics. However, if you are still too much crushed with the word limits from the reputed journal side, then in that case, you can club 2-3 subtopics together and write down them as a one single paragraph rather than writing the separate paragraph for each one of them. Can you please discuss how to go about in the introduction of PhD thesis? Actually, PhD thesis is not the scope of present webinar or a discussion. Still, even to write the PhD thesis, you can use this particular format that we have provided to you. However, just here you cannot write down 5 paragraphs of introduction in your PhD thesis. So for every one paragraph that we discussed or we put up, you can write down the 3 paragraph for that every one steps. I mean, to establish the problem or the situation, you can write down 3 paragraphs. To come to the problems, you can put down 2 to 3 paragraphs. Again, to come to the solution for that problem, you can write down 2-3 paragraphs. This is how you can extend your PhD thesis introduction. I always have followed the passive language of writing, and the same is endorsed by you in today's video. But I came across several Emerald journals, not much sure about the others, mentioning in their author's guideline that avoid using the passive language and use the word like we conducted and all. Any guidance on this? Yeah, several journals of Emerald, even with the Village, several journals, even 2 or 3 journals of Taylor and Francis, which I come across, they specifically mention not to use the passive language. So if the guideline of the journal is compulsorily binding you not to use the passive language, then you can use the active language. You can definitely use the word I or we. This kind of word are appreciated because the journal guideline is such. Because the reader of those journal are also mentally ready that you are going to write it as I conducted, we conducted, this kind of a word. So yeah, if journal guidelines is made you compulsory to use those language, you can go ahead with those language. Otherwise, you should specifically not use the passive language unless and until recommended by or endorsed by journal. Moving further, what would you please tell about the hypothesis, like in which part of the paper it should be written, the way of presenting it, and sometimes the researcher hypothesis are not framed in the study, reason for the same. I told you now, if you read the good quality journal, you will never get the hypothesis. It should not be written in a good quality journal. Still, if you are very much interested in writing the hypothesis, it should be written under the review of literature part or research methodology part, right? But avoid you writing the hypothesis as far as possible if you are talking about writing the quality research paper and targeting or eyeing for ABDC, Web of Science, or FT50 sort of a journal. What if we have quotation given by famous person from the field of the same, from the same field, or quotation is very appropriate with the theme of the research paper, or successfully integrating the subtopic or issue or issues in introduction. In introduction, you may write some quotes using those double quotation mark and write the name of those very popular person or a very popular quote of that particular field. That can be done, that can be written, but don't use too many quotes, right? However, never use quotes in writing the abstract. You can use it in introduction, no props, never in abstract, or never ever as a part of title or subtitle. If research paper is to study the impact of some act or law of a nation, we are forced to quote the line from the act or law. Can this be quoted line? Can this quoted line be included in literature review? You can use. I mean, this quoted line, and because it's a wordings of the law and it is not subject to change, right? You can use that in literature review, but you should mark it with italics. Just use the italicized, use the italic format for such quotations, and the reader would understand that this is something which is not been, this is something which are the words of laws or acts. Or should we mainly focus on the interpretation of the law? No, you can very well use the wordings of the law as it is, because it is not subject to change. I mean, it is not allowed to change those words. So you can put it as it is, but use the italic phase for such wordings. Should we always substantiate our ideas with citations? To what level our own statement hold true? No, you should always have citations for every idea that is there with you. Our own idea does not hold true except the last paragraph of introduction, wherein you can put some of your ideas, or research methodology, where you can put down your ideas in what sense you are using those particular methodology. Otherwise, our own idea does not hold true without either citation or support from data. You require either of these two. Another question was use of PICOT in title. Please explain. Now this PICOT stands for Population Intervention Comparison Outcome and Title. However, PICOT is not more useful and more acceptable way of framing the title or subtitle. First of all, it should not be a part of title. Even if you want, it should be a part of subtitle. And second, even if you are using this PICOT or any of the component of PICOT in your subtitle, that is not much appreciated in our study, or you can say in the management. However, it is most popular to use those PICOT words in medical science or biomedical science related studies. So basic concept of a PICOT been developed by them. However, sometimes some of our researcher would use a few of the component of this, but should be kept under the subtitle and not under the title. What is the analytical research paper? Analytical research paper. Analytical research paper would be those research paper having the data, having the data analysis tools, the findings, the discussion, everything would be included. These are known as analytical research paper. If the paper is not analytical, it could be purely a theory building paper, or it could be a literature review paper. or it can be a case study altogether. How to distinguish between an article and research paper? Apart from free thoughts of the researcher, what element of the research paper are present and absent in articles? The most important element of research paper, which is generally not present in article, and that is the data supports. Most of the articles are not having the support from the datas, and even the analysis of those data, the depth of the analysis of those data are not present with the articles, which are always present with the research paper. So that's what is the point of differentiation between articles and researcher. And of course, one of the difference you have already discussed, that free thoughts. Articles are free thoughts and research papers are not the free thoughts. It is not our own idea. Another question is also sometime people mention rational as a separate section. Any comments on this? If the journal is not very much particular, then where the rational of the study should go, what all should be covered in that? Can it incorporate sample justification also? For example, justifying the age group. Yes, to start with one by one each of your questions. Also, sometimes people mention rational as a separate section. Any comment on this? You may mention the rational as a separate section, or if you don't want to mention the rational of the study as a separate section, it can be a part of the last section of your introduction. You should use the rational behind this particular study as the introduction section, because that is where the people would be clear why they are reading this particular paper. If the journal is not very much particular, then where it should go? I already answered this question, that it should be the part of the last paragraph of your introduction section. Can it be incorporated sample justification also? No, sample just if you want to write down the justification for sample, it should not be included in the introduction section. It should be more detailed under the section of research methodology. If we talk about sample justification, it should be a part of research methodology. Another question, can you please discuss how to go about PhD thesis? I would rather request to cover all the chapters of thesis to be covered. Introduction, LR, data analysis, finding, conclusion for thesis, detailing at the time is very much needed, and times to shorten the content is better. I know it differs drastically based on the university's requirement and guide too. But quality work should avoid the certain mistakes. Expect your expert tips on the same. One of the suggestions recently received from one of the good webinar, that one should not write null hypothesis in this thesis and write only alternative hypothesis. Okay, so you have mentioned two different aspects while putting up this question. One is, what about the PhD thesis? And second one is, should we write the null hypothesis or should we write the alternative hypothesis? Going one by one. First, thesis. Thesis is an extended version of research paper, because research paper, as I said, that research paper have a different objective. You want to sell your research paper not only to your guide, to the evaluator of thesis, but also to the general public, and that too in a larger sense. The public would be from India, would be from any other country. Many a time the reader of your paper would be from your discipline or would be from other discipline. If I'll give my own example, to write this particular, to prepare this particular webinar, I read several papers from English literature aspects. Right, there are several papers been written in English literature, and I read those papers. Though I am not the man of English literature, neither I want to study anything on English literature, but because I want to satisfy my particular understanding about how to write the statements and what should be written, what should not be written, and what is the correct English literature, what is the correct English as far as this literature is concerned, right? So I read those papers. So it happens that sometimes your paper would go even to those who are not from your particular field, and that's why there are very high level of expectation from research paper. The expectations level are not so high when we talk about thesis, because in a very practical sense, though you may not feel this word as a good words, however, in a true practical sense, we all think about how many read our thesis. Very few. Very few refer our thesis for their own work. And how many read our research paper as compared to the number of people read our thesis? The answer is there are large number of people which read your research paper as compared to your thesis, and that's why you are free to experiment with your thesis. You can extend, you can lengthen your writings. If you write down 2 to 3 paragraphs which really do not convey much meaning out of it, would be okay with thesis. Here it is not okay. Okay, so this is what is my idea about differentiation on differentiation between thesis and a research paper. Your another question is on, should we write the null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis? Statistically, null hypothesis. As such, for a good quality paper, hypothesis should not be written. If you still want to write down the hypothesis, null hypothesis is what my understanding as a person from statistics, my understanding says that according to Karl Popper, every statistician, because Karl Popper has derived that concept of falsification, and according to him, every statistician must write null hypothesis and try to reject or fail to reject those null hypotheses. So to respecting Karl Popper's that theory and the basic fundamentals of statistics, one should write only null hypothesis, that too if absolutely necessary. If I talk about the research paper, thesis would definitely have all this null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. There you can write on both the hypotheses. Nobody is going to check out how many number of pages you prepared your thesis for, right? Rather, people would be very happy that your thesis is more lengthy and it is more bulky, and even you feel yourself proud on that bulkiness of the thesis. So with this I rest. Now, should we have any questions?